So, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
In view of what happened now, latest headlines that the United Nations have come out with a resolution to stop all further building in the West Bank and also in East Jerusalem. So it's the first time that America has not used their power of veto to disqualify the anti-Israel opinions of the members of the United Nations. And just a few days ago, there were some people who celebrated, I think it turned out on the 17th of Kislev, the recognition of the State of Israel by the United Nations, going back to 1948. So there's a complete reversal now. So let us look at it from the point of view of the prophets, what they say. Because we learned in yesterday's Parsha, which comes straight after the long list of the power of Esav and his descendants, and how the nations of the world, in the four empires, finally also in the fourth empire, which includes the power of Esav and the power of Ishmael. Who are those amongst whom there's been a stream of irrational anti-Semitism, which has come to a very high point in our time, when Ishmael's wildness has absorbed the cruelty of Esav, where the extreme fundamentalists of Islam have been partly responsible in the last few years for killing hundreds and thousands of innocent individuals, most of them Muslims, but also others, and even more recently, the terrible killings and massacres which took place in Syria. And these are hardly commented upon by the United Nations. And they allow these matters to continue. On the other hand, when it comes to Israel, there's irrational hatred which increases the libels against Israel and as well as the Jewish people. So when we're faced with such a situation, and it happens just in these parshas, so the sages say that our forefather Yaakov, he foresaw what might be happening in the future. The nations will target Israel. So Rashi brings at the beginning of the Parsha that Hashem, he declared, Ele Tordot Yaakov, Yosef. If you want to know the history of Yaakov, carry on with Yosef. And they refer to what's written in the prophet Obadiah, who prophesies concerning the way in which the fourth empire, combined also with the power of Ishmael, will try to rule the world, but ultimately they will fall. And the words that are used are, Beit Yaakov Eish, the house of Yaakov will become a fire, Ubeit Yosef, and Yosef, who follows him, will become a flame, and the house of Esau will be like chaff and stubble. And the fire of Yaakov, inflamed by the power of Yosef, will just burn up what the Esau, because it's like chaff and stubble. And the word v'lo yisarid, there will be no remnant left of Esau. But then it describes the salvation will come in the end, when even many of the nations of the world will fulfill what's written on the walls of the United Nations building, which are verses from the prophets, that all the nations will come and they'll say, let us learn the ways of God. Let us go on the mountain and learn from, it says, Beit Elokei Yaakov, the house of the God of Yaakov, of Jacob. And instead of being destructive, they will create a new world where there will be no wars left, and human beings will learn to live in peace. So Rashi brings an ancient midrash which says a parable. It's very interesting. That parable is connected also, the same expressions are used in the only Mishnah which refers to the lights of Chanukah. What is the parable? It says that this person who was a blacksmith, and he had his store next to a pretty narrow street and had fire burning. And there's a way to when the fire is just glowing, then he can blow it up with bellows to create flames. So there's no problem with him having a fire in his store, but he mustn't let the light of the fire or the coal drop into the street. Because then let's say if a camel passes by loaded with flax, and then it catches the light, he's liable, because he shouldn't have had his light in the street. So then, however, this is the first I'll give the mashal which Rashi brings. So Rashi says, who's the blacksmith who's got a fire and an anvil? That is Yaakov. And the flames that he produce, that's Yosef. And then, what happened if the camel comes in loaded with the flax? So the owner of the shop, the blacksmith, is afraid. What's going to happen? Maybe this flax is very flammable, and if a spark goes out from my shop, or if a bit of the flax blows into my shop, what's going to happen? So this is how Rashi brings it. So the wise person there says, never mind, don't be afraid. In other words, don't be afraid of the power of Esau, which is mentioned before. The power of Esau is destructive. It's likely to burn up your shop. It's likely to burn up the people of Israel. But this wise man says to the blacksmith, don't worry, fire will go up from you, and on the contrary, it'll burn up all the flax, burn up the camel, and you won't be harmed. So the way which this parable goes is, we know that the symbol of the Muslims is the camel. And Pishtan according to the deep interpretation of the Zohar of the Gaon of Vilna, there's a prohibition in the Torah of not intermingling wool and linen. And what lies behind this? That wool keeps you warm and linen keeps you cool. And this is a reference to the quality of chesed, of loving kindness, which keeps you warm, which you have to constantly pursue. And sometimes, let's say we fly into a temper, and other similar temptations, you've got to cool down your passions. Then you've got to put on linen, but you've got to know when to do each. Don't intermingle them. Don't go and use your power to be cool, calm and collected in the sight of enormous cruelty. There's some say, yes, enormous cruelty. Well, that's how it should be. It keeps cool, calm and collected. And don't go and use your power of warmth to fly into passions. In passions of anger, which is destructive, or passions of physical lusts, which can be very destructive. Use them for the good, not for the bad. So you've got to know when to use wool and when to use linen. And following the Gaon of Vilna and also Rabbi Chanukah Cohen, that Avraham Avinu is the Amud HaChesed. He was given many tests to make sure it should always be used when necessary, but there's a limit. He was shown borders to loving kindness. If you go too far, in the end, Kol HaMosef Goreh, whoever adds brings a deficiency. And he had one son, Ishmael, who had the power of chesed, but he translated into violence, chesed shel tumah, with loving kindness of impurity. That's why lustful sexual relationships are referred to in the Chumash as chesed. So it's got to be chesed ve'emes, chesed limited by truth. In Ishmael, he went too far, and his strong passions, tzachek, were used for idolatry, for rape, for robbery. And Esav, he was given the quality of gavura, of Yitzchak. Gavura means self-discipline. But Ezeu Giba Kovesh Yitza, who's really a Giba, who's got gavura? Someone who knows how to control his Yitzah. But this concept of control can also be used that a person wants to control other people, and anyone who's in his way, he'll kill him cruelly. It's got enough kavura of discipline that the discipline can be abused to go and experiment cruelly upon human beings in a destructive manner, and to find ways whereby you can annihilate whole populations like a person annihilates insects. And that's how human beings have been treated by Esav. So this is what he was afraid of. This is the pishton. This to be so cool that you're cruel. The coolness transformed into terrible cruelty. And the camel carrying the pishton is the situation of the danger to the human race today. That the Muslims are carrying the inheritance they took from Esav, as is described in Daniel. Daniel says that ultimately from Esav comes Ishmael's cruelty, because that's from Esav, but Ishmael includes it in his violence, in his passions. It comes a passion to be cruel. And he's even shown these days how little children are raised not with love but with hatred, how to hate people, how to passionately hate people and put your wildness into the way you can destroy others, which is a great danger to the obliteration of the divine image. So Yaakov was afraid. But a wise man says, never mind, you can burn them all up. Now this same parable is a halachic Mishnah in Bava Kama, and is brought in the discussion of Chanukah, which takes place in the Tractate of Shabbos. So, it's quoted as in the Gemara in Shabbos as the only Mishnah which mentions the lights of Chanukah. So what lies behind this? That the fire and the flame is the fire and the flame of Yaakov and Yosef. And where do we find that? That's the significance of the lights of Chanukah. Because, as we've said a few times, but this theme is developed above all by the Maral in a wide fashion, though it's hinted at in so many midrashim, that the miracle of the little bit of oil that grew to be able to supply for 8 days, although some say it wasn't even enough for one day, some thought it was enough for one day, which was the great miracle of Chanukah. But this miracle wasn't really necessary. Why? Because what does it matter if the consecration of the menorah and the Beit HaMikdash is postponed for a week? It starts a week later. What difference? A week later they would have found pure oil. They would have developed pure oil from olive trees. They had time enough to do it. And then, what difference did it make to anybody? Also, they were able to light the candle of the Beit HaMikdash a bit earlier. There's another principle, that if it's a question of the community needing some sort of a korban in the Beit HaMikdash, if it's for the community, tumhutra b'tzibor. For the community, it's permissible. This is for the community. It wasn't an individual offering in the temple. And then they could have made thinner wicks, or they had enough oil for one day. Make thinner wicks. It could last for 8 days. In fact, that's what people have done. Let's say a person is in a deserted place. He's only got one wick, and he needs to have the wicks for every day. He can take the wick apart and make very thin flames for the Chanukah, and he's only got a certain amount of oil for one day, so you can divide it into 8. You have each night have something. So they could have done the Beit HaMikdash. The miracle was entirely unnecessary. So it says, what is the miracle? The menorah is not just a candelabrum. And the menorah is, until today, the symbol of the people of Israel. It's all the symbol of the state of Israel, the menorah. And what does it mean? It says, Shlomo HaMelech said, Kineh mitzvah v'torah. The essence of the menorah is not the light, the physical light, which you can produce with a matchstick. No. It's the light of Torah and the mitzvot. Your word, Hashem, your mitzvot, are like a lamp to show me the path of life for my feet. So I'm not drifting, but I'm walking in life through a real purpose of reaching a high level of saintliness. And it's means it's like daylight to plan my future path. Nesivati is to know. Mitzvah is what I have to do each moment of life, how to use it, how to use whatever talents Hashem has given me to serve Him. But to have, the tiva means to have a real pathway, a pattern and a purpose in my whole life outlook. that comes through the light of Torah. So the individual, you can say, in fact, this commentary say, that Ner Ragel Revech is a practical mitzvah, represented by the lamp and even by the oil and the wick, but the light that comes from the flames, that is the insight that I get into life, the understanding of life, which is a reflection of the pure light of Hashem on the highest level, which brings us nearer to Hashem. Hashem's name is Mitzvah Chesed. It brings us nearer to find meaning in life, and not to think that life here has no meaning, or it's got an idolatry meaning, just to go and serve egoistic and self-centered, physical, animalistic passions. No, you're a human being. Human being possesses the light of Hashem, the potentials in his soul, and the Torah can develop it. So it's the Maharal goes into this very deeply, how to understand this miracle, and especially it's represented in the golden menorah which is shown to Zechariah for the whole Second Temple period, in which he was told, remember, the Second Temple period is going to be a period where you're involved with having to protect yourself against many enemies, physical ones and cultural ones. And you've got to preserve your Torah Sheba'al Peh when there's no more prophecy left. How can you preserve it? Through the light of learning Torah and understanding also the importance of practical mitzvot. And what was he told? The message of the menorah? Lo b'chayim v'lo b'koach kim bruchi. Don't think you as a nation will be able to survive through strength, through military strength. It's true, you might have to defend yourself against attacks on your body of the nation, also attacks upon the spirit of the nation. And how do you protect yourself? You won't be successful if you think that you can go into militarism and diplomacy throughout this period when you've got the Second Temple. No, won't work. Although there'll be times, even when they wanted to build the temple, the Jews at the beginning that came from Babylon were just over 40,000, and they didn't really have much abilities to build the temple. They were attacked by the Samaritans of the time and by others that defend themselves, but they were given support at the beginning from the Persian Empire, and they helped to establish it. But then afterwards, Zerubbabel, Ezra, and Nehemiah had to cope with a lot of opposition. So they were told, your best plan is, don't think, Kochi v'otzem yadi asali etachai lazeh. In fact, this verse of Zechariah the prophet goes back to the verse in the Chumash, where it says, when you're about to conquer the land of Canaan, all those nations, don't think that you, with your own power, will be able to be stronger than the other nations. No, only if you keep in mind constantly that it's the Spirit of Hashem that is supporting you. In the first temple period, supporting you with many miracles. The second temple period, hidden miracles, no longer open ones, and no prophets, but it's the power of Ruchi, the Spirit represented by the menorah. The Spirit means of mitzvah and Torah. And therefore the oil miracle is just a reminder that the survival is not in physical power. And maybe that's our message from what happened now. Just on the first day of Chanukah, we get such a message from the nations of the world that unfortunately in Israel there's a zigzag approach on the whole by the majority opinion. The zigzag approach is that there is a spirit from time to time that we don't have to bother about the symbol of the state, the menorah. We just have to make sure we've got the highest secret service, we've got the strongest army, strongest navy, strongest air force, and otherwise we use diplomacy. It's not enough. The Balfour Declaration was surely a sign from Hashem that the nation of the world, they will respect more if we keep to the teaching of the prophets and recognize that military power for the people of Israel, that is not our strong point. And whatever we try to achieve in weapons, in diplomacy, they'll just build themselves up to a higher level. Their enemies will just react. They'll say, well, if you're going to follow weapons, we'll get bigger weapons. I'll give you an illustration what happened here. Ben Gurion, who did know the Tanakh still and quoted it pretty regularly, and he approached it sometimes in ways where it had a great effect upon those who were engineering the other nations to be pro-anti-Israel. And he brought many to recognize that Israel's got a claim, got a charter that's at least over 3,000, some say over 5,000 years old, that this land is the land for the Jews. And that's what brought the Balfour Declaration, and that tradition was followed a bit also by those who established the state, like Ben Gurion. But he also used sometimes even the verses of the Tanakh in their opposite meaning. For example, when there was the claim that some of the nations made, why do you need so many non-conventional weapons? And we know the open secret. I mean, today's no secret anymore. But for the first decade, it was an open secret to the head diplomats of the world around, that Israel was arming itself to the teeth and wanted to defend ourselves. So he was challenged and said, why do you need constantly supply the best weapons for yourselves? So he's quoted a verse from Tehillim. The verse is, Hashem oez lamo yiten, Hashem yavrech et amo v'shalom. What did it say? Hashem will give strength to the people of Israel, and thereby Hashem will bless the people of Israel with peace. So we only want peace, it says. Our greeting is peace. We don't want pieces. So the only way we can have peace, if we have strength. What strength mean? Weapons. If we're able, even admitting when you quote the verses, Hashem oslam yiteh, Hashem will give many weapons to the people of Israel, but we're the ones who've got to purchase them and get them. We need the best weapon, the best aeroplanes, the best everything. Then we can have peace. It says so in the verse. What's the answer? So the sages answered this question. They said, he didn't know what the sages said. The sages said, Ein oz ela Torah. The strength of our nation lies in Torah. And therefore, Talmidei Chachamim, ma'abim shalom ba'olam. Those who are attached to Torah, they're the ones that increase peace. And I would say, as long as from the Foreign Office of Israel and from the leaders of the state, the message came out, we are the people who brought God into the world, we are the people who were given the Decalogue, we are the people who were given this, promised this land to be our homeland, and we affirm the truth of the Bible. So there was a wide level of support. Even though they didn't believe in the Bible, but they said they've got a point. In history, everybody knows. Even the most biggest secularists, they studied Jewish history objectively, and they said this proves there's a God in the world. And there's so many of the biggest leaders in all the nations in the course of human history who have recognized the power of God through the people of Israel. But if we ourselves no longer mention it and forget about it, then then people change their minds. They speak differently as well. When there's such a big section of the Jewish people that say, we want to assimilate, we don't want any connection with Israel, we are against what's happening there, we think Israel must remain a completely secular state and keep away everything religious. Well, that's a big problem. It creates a problem of the relationship with the other nations. So therefore, what we have to do today is to keep the light of the menorah, the state of Israel, burning brightly, and recognize that the utopian world, which was planned by the human rights description and even codification of the United Nations, which is written on the walls of the United Nations, we've got to do our part. It's not simple, but we've got to at least, even now in this situation, to defend ourselves, we should make maximum use of this line, which means we've got to bring the people of Israel to stronger conviction that we're going through a very difficult test now, because they're saying, you know what they're saying, that the Kotel and and all East Jerusalem, and that's all Muslim territory. Jews have no right to it, or no right to the Kotel. So just whatever was gained in the first years of the state, they're working hard to take it away from us. So it does not depend on our teshuvah to the real meaning of Chanukah. No time for questions today. The question will have to be tomorrow. Come at the